he is in prison, and it may very well have been that Luke and Acts, both written by the same man, of course, written to the same person, that maybe Theophilus was a lawyer. There's some thought about that, and that Luke may be giving an explanation about things to help in the defense of Paul. And there seems to be something to that, an interesting perspective. But Luke, we said, he is a Gentile writing to a Gentile. And that explains a lot of his perspective. So he is making this point about how Jesus is for everybody. And this theme text that we have from 19 verse 10, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. All of Luke is he's thinking in terms of the Gentiles. So he traces the genealogy of Jesus back to Adam. That's significant, telling us again who this is directed to. This is for everybody. He quotes from the Septuagint version of the Old Testament, which was the Greek version of the Hebrew Old Testament, and the implication that he doesn't know Hebrew. Well, why would he? He's a Gentile. So we looked at some of that on Sunday morning. Tonight we're going to start in here looking at the pre-ministry of Jesus, dealing with these first 3 chapters. And in terms of structure, we looked at there's basically 4 sections in this book, and the first being this pre-ministry. And it's a little ironic, given the time of year, that we're going to talk about this section of the story of Jesus, talking about his birth around Christmas time, and I think that's a good thing. There's much to be learned about Jesus from his birth, and it's often has been overlooked. In my experiences, the only time you'd ever talk about the birth of Jesus is in a setting like this, when we're studying a chronologic case. And other than that, it's just often overlooked. And I think when we, to talk about the birth of Christ this time of year is helpful. It's an opportunity, I think. It's on people's minds. It's still out there, although in the emphasis of the birth of Jesus is decreasing in some ways, I think. Maybe you have some experience with that. I do. But this is vital information to tell us who Jesus is and what his purpose is. And that's all conveyed in a lot of different ways in what happens. So keep that in mind as we go along. So to begin with, here we are at the Annunciation, the birth announcements of John and Jesus. So the first 4 verses we talked about on Sunday, the introduction, the address to Theophilus. This text is based on eyewitness testimony, and then he goes right into, he's going to pick up his story at this point with these birth announcements. So there's these parallel accounts. 2 things are happening here. And again, this gets to the structure that we're told this account regarding John, and then we're told a very similar account regarding Jesus, and they're presented just side by side. And there's some similarities here, but there's also some differences, and those differences are helpful. So you'll see some differences in terms of who John is and who Jesus is. There's different reactions between Zechariah and Mary. They're both given from the same angel, given information about these unexpected births that are going to happen. There's different reactions that are given there, and there's something that I think we can learn from that. So, what's the purpose of John? Why would things start happening with his birth? Why is his birth important?
He was prophesied, one of the few people besides Jesus being prophesied in the Old Testament to be the forerunner.
Okay. If you were in the Isaiah class, either last quarter or the quarter before, Isaiah deals with some of that. Somebody was supposed to come. Now, when we dealt with Isaiah, we said, prophecy is very cryptic, I think is a good word for it. And somebody's supposed to come. There's some messenger. Who that is, what he's going to do is vague, and you need little information in terms of that. But it's there. It's there, and that is significant in the role that John is going to have in what God is doing. Isaiah prophesied that God was going to do a new thing. He was going to do a new thing through the Messiah, and that somebody was going to come to prepare the way. It's the Lord is coming, and we need to make a highway for it. And John was going to be the one to help do that, to get ready for that arrival. So that's good to keep in mind here. So the angel Gabriel goes to Zechariah in verses 5 to 25, and then goes to Mary in 26 to 38. So who is Zechariah? Maybe we'll start there. He's a priest. Okay, he's a priest. What do we know about him or his family?
She's barren.
Okay.
And they were older.
They're older. Elizabeth barren. So that makes things difficult for them. It makes things difficult for Elizabeth, to be sure, but especially in that culture. To put it one way, that your kids were your Social Security policy, right? They're your kids are your retirement. They're going to take care of you when you're older, and they don't have children, and so that weighs very heavily on them, to the point where Zechariah he prays about that. So what happens to him on this particular day? It's his assigned duty there at the temple, and he's rendering his service, and something really strange and unusual happens. Not yet.
Angel.
Okay, Gabriel appears and tells him about how he and Elizabeth are going to have this child, and his reaction. Doesn't believe him. I mean, because it's just unbelievable, isn't it? It's just this. We've heard this story before, haven't we? Okay, we've heard this story before, right? With who? Okay, Abraham and Sarah. Isn't that interesting? This has happened. This sounds familiar. That connection's not being made with Zechariah, and quite frankly, I'm very hesitant to be the slightest bit critical of Zechariah given the circumstance. I cannot begin to relate to an experience like this.
I think one of the key points is they were both righteous in God and followed all His commandments. So that kind of sets the stage before all this starts to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's same with Abraham and those. I think it's it all sets the stage as we start.
Yeah, they're faithful, and that's pointed out here. You see it just in what Zechariah is actually doing when this happens. So Zechariah, he wants a sign. He wants additional proof. And I think that's, I mean, you know, my initial reaction is, yeah, I probably would want that too. But that's not, you know, Gabriel's reaction is, well, I'll get, you know, he's going to give him a sign. Be careful what you ask for. And then Gabriel uses the word unbelief. He uses the word unbelief here with him. That's what's going on with Zechariah. There's doubt. There's unbelief. So I'll give you what you want, but he's acknowledging that there's unbelief. And so he's unable to speak. He's made mute. And then he's got to, you know, go home and try to explain all of this. And that's, you know, that's described in some way. So that's going on. That there's a clear purpose that is established for this child. Gabriel tells him, you're going to name him John, and he's, you know, God is picking up where he left off. This new thing is coming, and this child John is going to be part of it. Any other things you want to point out about Zechariah? Mary. Gabriel has work to do. So in the 6th month, it says the angel Gabriel in verse 26 was sent from God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. And the virgin's name was Mary. And he came and said to her, greetings, O favored one, the Lord is with you. But she was greatly troubled at the saying, and she tried to discern what sort of greeting this might be. And the angel said to her, do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God. And behold, you will conceive in the womb and bear a son, and you shall call his name Jesus. And he will be great and shall be called the Son of the Most High. And behold, your relative Elizabeth, in her old age, has also conceived a son. And in the 6th month with her, who was called barren. For nothing will be impossible with God. And Mary said, behold, I am the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. And the angel departed from her. You know, when Gabriel comes to her, I like how the text says she's trying to discern what sort of greeting this might be. And you would probably be doing the same kind of thing. What is this about? What's going on? What's the meaning of this? Your mind would be filled with questions. And Gabriel calms her, or tries to calm her at least, that this is a good thing, and tells her that she's going to have a child, and the kind of child she's going to have is unique. The way in which she's going to have this child is unique, and she doesn't understand that. And where her request is different from Zechariah. And I've tried to point that out. Zechariah, he asks for additional proof, where Mary is asking for additional information. And her response to all of this is just amazing, right? Behold, I'm the servant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word. How old was Mary? 17. Sure. I mean, that most likely late teens. And that's what she says to all of this. That's something. That's something. Where Zechariah, he wants a sign. You know, he wants a sign. This older man a devout priest asking for a sign from an angel. And whereas this Mary, this young girl, demonstrates faith and a willingness to serve. There's a lot that she doesn't know about all of this, and I think that was true. That's true for the rest of her life. Trying to figure out who this son of hers is, and I know mothers tend to wonder about who their sons are, but Mary, throughout the course of her life, had a lot to try to work through. But from the very beginning, you have these two contrasts that Luke shows us, where there's doubt. I read somewhere where there's doubt, you'll go mute, and where there's faith, you'll be willing to serve. And I think you see some of that, Brian.
Two things to me is there in verse 29. It implies strongly that this was Luke interviewing Mary or birth.
Mm-hmm.
Because it says Mary is greatly troubled at his words and wondered how could he know she wondered it? She didn't tell him.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's one thing. Mary, has the servant's heart, but both of these people saw this angel, and I think there was something distinct. I don't think it was just sometimes it appears that angels look like men, but but I don't know, maybe there wasn't something distinct, and she just accepted it, and Zechariah did.
Mm-hmm. Just two different reactions.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Zacharias is wrong. That's not the point I'm trying to make. That this is a bad reaction, this is a right one. They're just different. And there's different reactions that we see in the events of this part of the book. And the point is, though, that God's working with all of them. He's going to work with all of them. I mean, you see what happens and what develops with Zechariah. And he's absolutely accepting of everything. And when he seems to take the lead in some things, even when there's a question about what the name of his son, he's emphatic. If there, we might think that Zechariah named his son. Zechariah didn't name his son, right? Gabriel named his son. You're going to call him John, and then so he's fully on board with what's happening here. Go ahead.
I was just thinking we were talking about Mary being so young and Zechariah being old, and then later on, when Jesus says your faith needs to be like that of a child, and Mary's just so willing to trust, whereas the older we get, we know better.
Yeah.
We have so many things we're already trying to sort through. It's just like one of those simple comparisons, just even at that she's like, I don't get how it's going to happen, but okay, I just believe it's going to. Where she's like, wait, this doesn't line up.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, what Gabriel tells her, that there will be nothing impossible for God. That's always been the case. That was true with Abraham and Sarah. And when they're grappling with how God's going to use them, God's always able to do the impossible. One of my favorite ways that God is described by Paul in Romans 4, when he's talking about Abraham and Sarah, that he's the God who raises the dead. That's quite a description, right? I mean, there's the God who can do the impossible. And regardless of what happens to the people through whom he's working. Anything else about the two visitations? And to Brian's point, Mary is most likely one of the eyewitnesses that he interviewed. I mean, remember, when you're reading these accounts, he interviewed eyewitnesses to put all of this together. So Mary very well could have been, very, very, very well could have spoken to her.
in a way, Elizabeth's pregnancy is a sign for Mary. She didn't ask for a sign, but it's there.
Yeah.
Because it's clearly a miracle.
Yeah, clearly a miracle, and that's, I think that's part of why Zechariah, or why Gabriel tells her that that's already happening. Anything else? All right. And there's the visitation here between Mary and Elizabeth, and there's a scene, if you could have been the fly on the wall when those two got together. It really must have been something, and in some ways, I suppose we can relate to this sort of thing, and the excitement of pregnancy and babies kicking and moving around and that sort of thing, and so there's that. What is significant, of course, is the fact that the emphasis is placed on the child that Mary's going to have. That's how those reactions are taken. They're signifying that he is the one who's in a place of supremacy. The rest of the chapter, we have two songs. Silence breaking. I want you to think in terms of silence breaking. Silence in terms of, Zechariah, he's going to break his silence. But who else is breaking their silence? God is. God's breaking his silence. And that's indicated in some of what are stated in these songs. So Mary's song, the Magnificat, that's the first word in Latin that's used in this song. Now, you probably know this is not an unusual thing, and when some great mighty work of God has been done, and that's how the Bible generally refers to what we call miracles, the mighty works of God. Signs and wonders are how they refer to those things. We typically say miracles. But often, when a mighty work of God had been done, a song would be sung. A song would be composed to commemorate it. And you can go back into the Old Testament and you can see some of that. So I think this is in keeping very much with a well-established tradition among the Jews. And so Mary, in verse 46, says, Mary said, My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength in his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things. The rich he has sent away empty. He's helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham, and to his offspring forever. Is there anything that stands out to you when you read that?
One thing that I was pointed to recently, one of the very few verses that Catholics will go to for the reason they venerate Mary is from verse 48. From now on, all generations will call me blessed. Mm-hmm. So that was just something I learned recently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other reactions to it? Who does she venerate in the song?
He. All about he.
All about he. Yeah, she's praising God, and it's interesting what she's acknowledging, and I think if we see what she's acknowledging, we can understand why Luke would include this in his writing. Verse 51, he scattered the proud. 52, he brought down the mighty from their thrones, exalted those of humble estate, filled the hungry with good things. We said that Luke is writing, he emphasizes the poor, the marginalized. And that's what she's acknowledging. I mean, who's Mary? Mary she's a nobody. She is from every perspective, she's a nobody. This little girl, I mean, she's engaged to be married. I keep getting behind. I was looking at that on my chart. I didn't have it over here for you. But anyhow, she's nobody, but God's going to use her. So she praises God. Well, this is what God does, right? This is how God works. This is who God's looking for, and these are the kinds of things that are going to happen with Jesus when he comes of age and begins his ministry. These are the kinds of people he's going to seek out. The proud, the people of status are the ones who are going to reject him. They're the ones who are going to try to get in his way. So Mary's song is about God ruling. It echoes some of the sentiment of the second psalm, where that's going to be used in Jesus' ministry. The kings of the earth are conspiring against him, but God laughs and crushes the kings of the earth like a rod of iron crushing a clay pot. God rules, God reigns, and he exalts the humble. Anything else about Mary's song?
Do you think she made this up on the spot?
I doubt it.
I think, wow, that's nice.
Well, songs are often written really quick, but I doubt it. I would say this came later. I would say that came later. And in keeping with, if Luke is talking to her, and I would say.
Because if she did make this up, at that point, when it says that Mary said, then she understood a lot.
Yeah.
I can see her understanding all this later, for sure.
Yeah.
That's
a good question. When did she write that? Well, finally, Zechariah breaks his silence. In verse 68, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he has visited and redeemed his people. He's raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of the servant of David, as he spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets from old, that we should be saved from our enemies and from our hand of all those who hate us, to show the mercy promised to our fathers, and remember his holy covenant, the oath that he swore to our father Abraham, to grant us that we, being delivered from the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. And you, child, will be called the prophet of the Most High, and you will go before the Lord to prepare his ways, to give knowledge of salvation to his people and forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, whereby the sunrise shall visit us from on high, to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet in the way of peace. Now, Zechariah might have wrote that on the spot. He might have wrote that on the spot, given who he was and the understanding he would have had, taking his understanding and bringing it together with what Gabriel tells him, having time to think about it. God's doing a new thing. He's chosen his son to be part of that. I said in Isaiah, and I think I'm not the first to say this, but I think it's a good way to understand the Jews' perspective that they had for generations, is that they were living in a story that had yet to be completed. They're living in a story that is yet to be completed. So there's a lot that's going on in the past. There's a lot of their history, a storied history. And that story history is it shapes their identity. It is commemorated in their worship continually, right? That comes out in this song. But it's not just about the past, right? It's about what's God going to do in the future. How's He going to finish this story? And what you get here from Zechariah is, okay, He's going to finish it. It's coming. The time is now. The time is now. He's made promises to Abraham. He's made promises to David. And if we've wondered if He's going to keep those promises, we talked a lot about that in Isaiah. That's the big question during the exile and coming out of it. Is God just done with us, or is He going to continue to use us? Well, the answer in Isaiah is that yes, He's going to be faithful, and there's a strong resonance of that comes out in this song of Zechariah, and so there's I think he's excited. How's God going to do this? What's this going to involve? He doesn't know. He doesn't know all the details to it. None of them do. And they're going to see things develop that are going to probably create more questions than answers at the time. But God is going to be faithful. And that's what this is about. He's going to bring salvation to His people and to all people. So, in verse 80 rather, the child grew and became strong in spirit, and he was in the wilderness until the days of his public appearance to Israel. So, John has quite a life. We don't know about. Outside of that, I would suggest to you that his life is going to be preparing the way. That's what his life is all about, and there's a reason why he had the reputation that he did. By the time we pick up the story with him again, 30 years down the road, this madman living out in the wilderness, this crazy man out of the Jordan River. John is an outsider. He is an outsider for sure, and yet God's going to use that outsider, and He does an incredible service. I like to talk about John. We'll come back to him in a little bit, but Jesus would go on to say that among the prophets there was no one greater than John. And that's saying something. All right. Chapter 2. I've got the birth and early life of Jesus. So the days, it says here in verse 1, a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration when Quirinius was governor of Syria, and all went to be registered, each to his own town. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, from the town of Nazareth to Judea, to the son of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed, who was with child. And while they were there, the time came for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn. So, the context here is understandable, given who the author is. This Gentile would tell us about a decree about Caesar. He gives us some specific details from that perspective. What brought Joseph and Mary to Bethlehem? That poor girl. having to travel like that. I don't know if the doctor said it was okay for them to travel like that, but that's what they did. Yeah, I can't imagine how difficult that trip would have been. But it ended up, her giving birth to Jesus in a very humble way here, as is described. This sure doesn't seem the way we would think of a king being born, a king of the world, or someone of significance or of importance. And of course, that's the point, right? That's the point. And this is going to be an important part of Jesus' story in the humble way he came into the world. Paul will explain that though he were rich, he became poor so that we might be rich. And the thought of him leaving heaven, coming here, had he been born into the world to the son of the richest man in the world, the way Paul describes him would ring true. And thinking about leaving what he left is incredible. A demonstration of his love and devotion to his Father to bring about the salvation of mankind. Moving on to this next section in 8 to 21, there's going to be intervention that takes place again. That there are angels. And again, if you're going to announce the birth of the King of the world, you go to shepherds? Really? Why wouldn't you go to, Augustus and tell him? But no, shepherds. In the same region, it says in verse 8, there were shepherds out in the field keeping watch over their flock by night. And the angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them. And they were filled with great fear. And the angel said to him, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger." And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of heavenly hosts, praising God and singing and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among those whom he is pleased." When the angels went away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let us go over to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has made known to us." And they went with haste and found Mary and Joseph and the baby lying in a manger. And when they saw it, they made known the saying that had been told to them concerning this child. And all who heard it wondered at what the shepherds told them. But Mary treasured up all these things, pondering them in her heart. And the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen, as had been told them. And at the end of 8 days, when he was circumcised, he was called Jesus, the name given by the angel before he was conceived in the womb. So again, we could understand why these shepherds would be terrified. Now, you think about a shepherd, these would have been pretty rough and rugged men. Maybe in our culture we think of, cowboys, rough and tough, not afraid of anything, right? And accustomed to being outside and dealing with all of the danger that would come along outside at night, and they're terrified by what happens here. And they're told, no, it's a good thing has happened, and they're given instructions. There's a sign. It's a baby's been born. Well, great. How are we going to find a newborn baby in Bethlehem? How are they supposed to find this child? What's the clue? Okay, it's swaddling clothes, lying in a manger, right? And there's all kinds of explanations about the terminology that's used in this text, and translation is as one scholar has said, that translation is the result of a lot of compromise. But I think the best way to understand where this child was put is in a feeding trough. We think, this little, any of the mangers you usually see, they just look like a homemade crib, right? That's not what, he wasn't put in a bassinet, he's put in a feeding trough. And it's interesting that this feeding trough is mentioned 3 times. 3 times in the text. That's curious. This child placed in the feeding trough. It's like, what's being conveyed? What's being communicated through this? Is there some symbolism there about what this child is going to do? Is going to offer? It could be. It could be. Again, it's interesting that 3 times this feeding trough is mentioned by the angels, and as Luke records it. So I like how it says how Mary treasures all of this up. Again, here's when she had information at the beginning. Now she's given birth to this child. She has more information about it. And what does that mean? What's this mean for the future? She doesn't know. I'm sure there wasn't a day that went by that she didn't think about it. This is the kind of stuff that probably kept her up at night. And who's her son going to be? How's he going to do this? How's all of this going to work out? And she's just going to have to patiently wait and see. The heavenly host that's described is really something. You can't read this without imagining in your mind what this would have looked like or what this would have sounded like. Who's the heavenly host? How would you describe the heavenly host?
Angels in heaven?
Yeah. Was this like the choir?
Was this not something like the Transfiguration?
There's an instance where heaven breaks through. The word host is used here. If you look at the word, at the Hebrew word, or the Greek word rather, it sometimes is translated armies. And if you understand what's happening here in the larger context of spiritual warfare, that isn't the choir. They're the ones who are protecting, overseeing what's happening. This child has been identified, but he has been identified to just a few people. And there's going to be, in the next chapter, there's another way that he's identified. And it's not by the heavenly armies. It's going to come from the voice of the Father. We'll get into that on Sunday. So thank you for coming. Hope you have a good evening. What's left of it? Hey, how are you? Good. Guys. Yeah.
Oh, it was right on the end. Oh, almost.
The winner.
There he is.
That's right. He's a real shepherd.
center, you know, when people go there, it makes it feel like.
Yeah, do what you want to.
Yeah.
Do his brother in.
Yeah, I know I'll be able to find those guys easy.
We got Elvis supervisor now. Okay.
And there was like, it was just, there was a group of them. Yeah, like a couple churches.
This time down, buddy.
The way that.
But what was funny, it's a progression. Started out with Christian church, and
You don't get it.
they broke off.
Oh, should be by now,
Then they start bringing friends together. For the worst week, we felt like lost.
Yeah, right, right, according to them.
They do.
But it's just funny that they cooperate.
But they
I couldn't believe it. Yeah, we need like 8 or 9 churches that participate in this, but help fund it.
They like
I'm
them.
thinking, no, there's no scripture for
I
that.
got them from my brother.
And it was like a,
First year, 1 year,
like a
next
girl
year,
in the gospel.
I was another thing. I was but it's not them all the time. I feel very comfortable. I will have to go and, where do you go to get Fleet store? Fleet Feed in Carterville. Oh, okay. There is one in down Poplar, way down there on Berkeley. Yeah. That's it. Okay. Yeah. The Fleet store. Fleet Feed. Okay. Over by, Huey, over near Cole, but on the other side of Poplar. Yeah, that was Ford dealership. Yeah. On the other side. Yeah. I didn't even know that was back there. Yeah.